The book of First Chronicles, Part 1. This book of First Chronicles is going to be kind of a little bit tedious to understand. This book is moreover for the deeper scholar, because in this book you're going to have many genealogies, starting of course with Adam, and they're going to go down in order until you get to certain points where you're going to get sidetracked, because instead of following the line from Adam down to David or certain other characters in the Bible, it's going to jump off on sidetracks every now and again, such as with the sons of Japheth, or the sons of Gomer, or the sons of Javan. And it's going to do that pretty much through this book of First Chronicles. In other words, it's not going to be quite completely in chronological order. It's going to list the entire family tree, but it's also going to mislead some if you don't rightly divide and keep track of who is who in the Bible. This book of Chronicles is largely so you can keep track of the family seed line. But again, it's not going to be from A to Z necessarily. It's going to be A, and then it's going to be B, C, D, and then it's going to be D, A, D, B, D, C, and then it's going to jump down a few, and then it's going to be FA, FB, FC. In other words, when I say A, B, and C, in other words, it's going to give the lines of the sons. So it's going to give father, son, grandson, and then the son's grandsons all the way through, or the son's sons. There is no word for grandson in the Hebrew, or grandfather. But it will kind of throw you in places, because you'll be reading along and it'll be going through what we know to be the history of the children of Israel and their descendants, and then it will take a side path and go off to the descendants such as Canaan and Put and Mitzrayim and Cush. These were not the children of Israel. They were children of Abraham, and we're going to have some explaining to do when it comes through that, because again, if you do not rightly divide, you're going to be totally lost. So this book is going to take a lot of your attention. Again, it is for the deeper scholar. It is a book that is going to be not so hard to understand necessarily from the English, but in keeping the seed line straight and in keeping with the correct people and the seed line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So, having said that, we're going to begin here in Chronicles chapter 1, verse 1. And before we begin, as always, let us go to our Father's throne and ask for wisdom and guidance as we study this, His most holy word, from this book of Chronicles. So let us pray. Our glorious Heavenly Father, King of heaven and the earth, Creator of heaven and earth and all souls and all fleshly beings therein, we come before you this day, Father, and we ask for wisdom and guidance. We ask you to help us rightly divide this word, Father, and keep the seed line straight, and to make note where they go off on their little sidetracks. As a tree grows up, it has many branches off of it, and though they're all part of the same tree, not necessarily all the branches are part of the line of the progeny in which is covered in this book as far as being of the children of Israel. And we know this, and we know the difficulty there's going to be teaching it. So we ask you to lead us and guide us, Father, to open our eyes and hearts and ears and eyes to the truth, as well as all those who study with us. And we ask that your hands always be upon these studies, Father, to lead us and guide us to that which is the truth, and not to that which is speculation, or that which is determined by the less than scholarly, and which can mislead. So we ask for that pure, undistilled truth, Father, in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Yeshua Messiah. Amen. Okay, as I'd said, this is going to begin with Adam, which is, of course, Eth Ha-Adam in the Hebrew. This would be the man Adam, who was in the Garden of Eden, who was the husband of Eve, who was seduced by Satan along with Eve. In other words, I don't need to paint any pictures of what happened there, but this would be that Adam. And you're going to notice in verse 1 here that his line does not continue with Cain, nor will you find Cain as being part of the lineage of Adam in Genesis chapter 5. That is because Cain is not the son of Adam. Cain is the son of Satan. We've documented this a number of times in studies such as Satan's seed, Cain's progeny, and several others, the seed of Moses. And by now, those of you who studied long enough with me ought to know that Cain did not come forth from Adam. I realize what it says in English. Adam knew his wife, and she gave birth to a son and called his name Cain and says, I have gotten a man from the Lord. However, it is the Lord that creates all souls, even the souls of the Kenites, even the soul of Satan when it comes right down to it. But Cain has no particle with the family of Adam. And not only is that shown in Genesis chapter 5, that Cain is not part of the seed line, but a separate seed line, but it's shown here in the book of 1 Chronicles. So we're going to jump right into it. Verse 1 of 1 Chronicles chapter 1. Adam, Sheth, and this of course would be Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahaliel, Jared, verse 3, Enoch, Methuselah, and this would be that one Methuselah who almost lived 1,000 years, but he fell a little bit short. That's where the old saying comes, as old as Methuselah or old as Methuselam. Either name is still the same. It's translated a little differently. And to continue, Lamech, and then of course verse 4, Noah, and this would be Noah of Genesis chapter 6, the Noah of the flood. Shem, and this would be, of course, Shem, the father of the Shemites, of which through the children of Abraham would be born, because Abraham would be born of this one. And then there's Ham. This would be Ham that committed incest with his mother by looking upon his father's nakedness, and if you go into the Bible deep enough, you'll understand what it means to look upon your father's nakedness. It means to commit incest with your mother. So, there was a child born of this union between Ham and his mother called Canaan, which is why Noah cursed Canaan. But just because Noah cursed Canaan, it did not mean anything. It was type of a symbology. It was that Canaan would be an unclean people because they were of an unclean birth. But it has nothing to do with what most associate it with. In other words, there are those that say that the black race came from the line of Ham. Well, they did not. The black race, as covered in the book of Genesis, were created on the sixth day and were part of the men that God created on the sixth day of creation. And then God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And he looked around and saw that there was no man to till the field, And he caused the dew to fall on the earth from heaven, and he formed a man of the ground. There are many ways you can document that to be the truth. One, for example, would be 6-day man had woman with him. Male and female created he them, and he told them to go forward and be fruitful and multiply. The man created after the 7th day, and I'm not necessarily going to say the 8th day, because it's not written as to whether it was the 8th day, the 9th day, the 10th day, or whatever. We assume it was the 8th day, but Adam, when he was created, had no helpmate until a helpmate was created from him. In other words, she would be Adamic as he was. This would keep the family line. And this would be Eve, who was seduced by Satan and brought forth Cain, which is the father of the Kenite people. And then she would bear again and bear his brother Abel. And Cain, in following the works of his father Satan, would slay righteous Abel out of jealousy. And God would give Adam and Eve another son, one Seth. And it would be through Seth that would come these children, such as we're reading of here, Enosh, Kenan, Mahaliel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. Noah would come forth of this line. And then it is correct, it lists Shem first. Shem would be the progenitor, again, of the Shemites. This is where we get the word Shemitic from, Semitic. And he would bring forth Abraham through his seed line, and eventually the children of Israel, whereas Ham and Japheth would bring forth other children of Adam, but they would not be of the line of Abraham. So now that we've got that straight, verse 5. And this is one of those off tracks that I was telling you about, where you kind of get sidetracked. It's going to give you the sons of Japheth. So verse 5. The sons of Japheth: Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. Now don't be thrown by these names that you see quite frequently in the Bible, such as Magog or Meshech. These are simply names that were passed down. There are at least a dozen people with these names all through biblical history, written in the pages of the Bible. Probably way more than that when it comes down to the whole of the children of this family of Adam. But it's much like it is now. If someone now is named George, it doesn't necessarily make them King George from a few hundred years ago, or even the father of Queen Elizabeth, King George VI. In other words, it's all in a name. People are named for their predecessors in a lot of cases, or a new name is created which has meaning, and that is done even to this day. A lot of people name people after their family line. So just because you're reading these names, this doesn't. In other words, if we come across a Jeremiah, it's not necessarily Jeremiah who wrote the book of Jeremiah. If we come across a Daniel, it's not necessarily the Daniel that wrote the book of Daniel. So I just want you to understand that as we go along here. Verse 6. And the sons of Gomer. See, now we're jumping down a generation to the sons of Gomer, who's the son of Japheth. Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah, or Togarmah. Verse 7. And the sons of Javan: Elisha, and Tarshish, and Kittim, and Dodaneum. Verse 8. And the sons of Ham: Cush, and Mitzrayim, and Phut, and Canaan. Now, here is why a lot of people believe that the sons of Ham brought forth the black race. If you'll check out this word Cush in the Hebrew, it will be word number 3568 in your Strong's Concordance. As a matter of fact, we're going to read the Strong's Concordance definition of the word Cush, and we're going to compare it to the online Strong's Concordance, the Blue Letter Edition lexicon. Word number 3568, that's H3568 in your Hebrew portion of your Strong's Concordance. It says Cush, probably of foreign origin, Cush or Ethiopia, the name of the son of Ham and of his territory. His territory, not his family line, his territory. This means he settled in that territory. Also the name of an Israelite, Cush, Ethiopia. One thing you need to understand about the Bible, especially if you're a deeper scholar and studying the Hebrew, is that there are people who have land named for them. And just because a person lives in the land and becomes called by the name of the land does not make them a son of the person who formed the land. In other words, this one Cush, if you go to the Blue Letter Lexicon online, it says Cush, and it is the correct word reference, 3568, but here is the definition from the Blue Letter Lexicon. Black. Well, we've looked up the word black recently in the a couple of the previous books, and there are many words for black in the Hebrew language. Shakur, Shakar, Shakur, and they're all a derivative of the same word. However, most of them have reference to being swarthy complected, in other words, tanned. In other words, not necessarily black. The only reason people believe that this word means black, as far as race or origin, is because of its definition. It's got nothing to do with race. In these times, people did not refer to each other as black or white or red or anything else, except for the case of Edom, where he is called red. But he was not called red because of his skin color. He was called red because he was born at birth and he was red. However, he was named Esau, hairy. He became called Edom because of the land that he dwelled in. And of course, to give you prophecy as to what nation he would become. In other words, that red nation. And not necessarily the people, but the system. In other words, the socialist, communist style nation. But we're going to continue here with this definition for this word Cush from the Blue Letter Lexicon online. It says Cush equals black. Well, even the original Strong's Concordance does not name him as being black. This is an assumption made by whoever put the Strong's Blue Letter Lexicon up. It very well may mean black, but if it does, it moreover probably means black-headed. In other words, black hair, a thick black mane of hair. Or some other reason for calling it black. In other words, it could even be that in doing the definitions and looking up the references of the word, they found the word Cushites. Cushites were often black people In other words, Africans who had migrated into the land of Cush and became called Cushites because they migrated into the land, not because they were of the children of Cush. This has led a lot of people to believe false things in the Bible. This is why a lot of people believe that the black race came from Ham. That when Noah cursed his grandson, or when he cursed Canaan, that it somehow changed Canaan's color. Well, it did not. Noah did not have that power. And neither did God curse Canaan. The cursing of Canaan has to do with the unclean people that would be born of the land of Canaan. In other words, there is a spiritual example there. Noah cursed Canaan, and of Canaan's seed would come the Canaanites. And of the Canaanites would come many of the peoples of the land which were cast out of the land for the children of Israel to take their place, because they were idol worshippers. So, at any rate, let's read the definitions here. Definition 1. A Benjamite mentioned only by title in Psalm 7. In other words, Cush. Verse 2. The son of Ham, grandson of Noah, and progenitor of the southernmost peoples located in Africa. Okay, this definition is not a truth. It is an assumption. And it is a commentary added by somebody because it's not found in the original Strong's Concordance. Cush is the son of Ham and the grandson of Noah, but he is not the progenitor of the people of southernmost Africa. He is the owner of the territory that the people of southernmost Africa dwelled in or moved into and became called Ethiopians, which is why the word Ethiopian is associated with black. There is a lot to be learned from the Hebrew language about land association. The father-in-law of Moses, which was Jethro, is sometimes called Hobab and was referred to as a Kenite. Well, he was referred to as a Kenite not because he was a Kenite, in other words, he was not of the seed line of Cain, but because he dwelled in the land that was held by the Kenites. Hobab, or Jethro's seed line, is given in the Bible as being a son of Midian, which was a son of Abraham, that is to say, down through the generations, by his concubine, or you could say second wife, Keturah. Definition number 3 from the Blue Letter Lexicon. The peoples descended from Cush. Now, that would be true. There were people descended from Cush. However, they are not the black Ethiopian African people, because, first of all, Noah was Adamic, which means his sons were Adamic. If you go and look up the word Admoni in the Hebrew, you will find out that it means the people of Adam, and the word is translated ruddy, which means to show blood in the face. They are not a dark-skinned people, save that they are tanned and become swarthy. But here you see the difficulty when you study in the old languages. You have to be extremely careful of what you're talking about, and you have to be extremely careful at rightly dividing our Father's Word and what is fact and what is fiction. In other words, what we just read here in the second definition, the progenitor of the southernmost peoples located in Africa, is not speaking of the black African, or that is to say, Negro. It has nothing to do with them. There's a lot of people that are going to argue that because they simply do not understand, but nevertheless, that's the way it is. If they want to argue it, fine, they can argue it until they're blue in the face. It's not going to change my mind. I've done enough study to know what I'm talking about. And if you do enough study in this, you will understand too that this is not the father of the black race. White people do not just bear black children, save they, much like our president and many other people have done now, breed with a person of another race, that is to say of the black race. Then they can produce a child which is a dual race child, but often it will take on, that is to say the child will take on the attributes of either the father or the mother or both. But you know, you've got people that will say that life began in Africa. In other words, back in the days of the cavemen or whatever. And they migrated north, and because of a change of area, they suddenly became white. And then you've got people that will say quite the opposite. They will say that the first black person was the son, Cush here, the son of Canaan. So, the son of Ham. At any rate, I hope you're able to stay with this and grasp it. This is going to slow us down considerably in having to explain this, but we're trying to be as accurate as we can here so that you understand that the sons of Ham, which is to say Cush, and Mitzrayim, and Phut, and Canaan, were all Adamic, ruddy-complected people. So, just because a person is called a Cushite does not mean that they are the sons of Cush. That is what it is supposed to mean. But as I've shown you in the Bible, in many places, there is land association involved with this. And when a people migrate into the land, they become called by the name of that land. In other words, there are many of us who are European descended peoples that live here in America, and we're called Americans. However, this is not the land of our origin, and there are many African American peoples that live here in America, and they are Americans. However, they are not born of this land. In other words, native to the land, as we the Europeans are not, nor any other race really. Even the American Indian, it is widely believed, came from Polynesian peoples and was not native born to this land, but rather that they migrated here and over periods of thousands of years grew into a large people which became the American Indian. So you want to watch out for land association in the Bible, and you know, it all comes down to what's in a name. Now, another point I want to make here is the name Mitzrayim here. If you say Egypt in the Hebrew tongue, and you can verify this by going to your Strong's Concordance and looking up Egypt, it is this name, Mitzrayim. And if you check out this word Put, which is also sometimes spelled Phut, P-H-U-T, it is the land of northern Africa from Libya even on into Morocco. So, these were the places that were settled by the sons of Ham. However, this does not mean, because they settled on the African continent, that they are of the black race. That is a misnomer and a misperception. And with enough study in Hebrew and Hebraisms and learning the languages, this will become overwhelmingly apparent to anyone. And, you know, it does take time. You may not see it for quite some time. I had great difficulty with this in the beginning until I understood the land association and how people became called by land association. In other words, most people, when they think of Cush or Cushite or Ethiopian or Mitzrayim, Egypt, or Foot, Libyan, they think, well, it's on the African continent, and there were black dynasties of pharaohs, which there were. There were also white dynasties of pharaohs. And because there are black people called Cushites, this obviously means that these people were black and of the Negroid people. Well, that would be incorrect. That is an assumption. Cush, Mizraim, Foot, and Canaan were all Adamic complected, which means ruddy complected. They were Adamic. In other words, they were what we call the Caucasian color. They were not Caucasian people because, quite frankly, the Caucasians did not exist yet as far as a people. They would not come along till the tribes of Israel migrated into the Caucasus mountain range and started being called Caucasians, as well as the children of Edom, who also crossed that mountain range and probably also took on the name Caucasians, which is why we refer to white people as Caucasians now, no matter where they're from, Russia or Europe or America or Australia or whatever. At any rate, this runs deep. It's going to be hard to understand. I expect to have a lot of people argue with me over this. I expect to get a lot of nasty messages. But it will only prove to me that you have not done your study in the Hebrew if that's the case. Because anyone who does study, and I mean deep study in the Hebrew, will find out that these are names and they are land associated names. In other words, when Cush became the Cushites, which is also called Ethiopia, there were blacks that migrated into the land, most likely from the southernmost tip of Africa, and became called Cushites. They also migrated into the land of Mitzrayim, which is to say Egypt, and became called Egyptians. They also migrated into the land of Foot and became called Phutians or Libyans. However, amongst all of these people in Egypt, in Foot, which is to say Libya, in Morocco, and even in Ethiopia, there have always been a certain number of white people. And a lot of people don't care to admit this. A lot of people try to push it up under the carpet and say that's not true. A lot of people think that all Egyptians have always been black or dark-skinned as the Arabic peoples, but you know what? A lot of people don't even realize that the land Mitzrayim was also taken over by the Arabic peoples, as well as the land of Cush and the land of Foot, which is to say Libya, which is why the Islamic religion is so prevalent there now. And a lot of the people are of a darker skin tone, but they're not African blacks. So you can move peoples around all through history, and they will be adopted into the name of the land. In other words, the people that still dwelled in the land of Canaan, which Israel did not chase out or kill off as God instructed them to do, became called Jews, including the Kenites. And Kenite does not have any portion with the name Canaan or Canaanite. Kenite is a separate word from Canaan. If you look up Canaan, it will be the word Kenan. And if you look up the word Kenite, it is Kenai. And if you look up the word Cain, it is Cain. In other words, it would be spelled in its original form, Quyn. And now in its more modern form, they've added an A to give it its sound. And it's even pronounced Cajun in some places, but it's still Q Alif, which is to say A-Y-I-N, a derivative of Q-Y-I-N, its original spelling. And then with the sons, you've got Q-E-Y-I-N-I-Y, and I-Y at the end of any people's names means the people of. In other words, you can verify this by going and looking up people's names in the Bible as far as whatever people is being discussed. They will usually have an IY at the end of the name, which means the people of, in the Hebrew tongue. So, now that we've got this out of the way, we're going to move on to verse 9, and I doubt we're even going to get a full chapter covered here, but maybe we will if we just move through the names very quickly here. And the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, Sabteca, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And you might recognize these as some names of lands. Verse 10. And Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be mighty upon the earth. This would be the Nimrod that built the Tower of Babel. In other words, he was the king in the earth. He was a mighty man. Verse 11. And Mitzrayim begat Ludlam, and Anamim, and Lebahim, or Lehebim, and Naphtuhim. And it might do you good to look up some of these names too as well. Verse 12. And Pathrusim. This would no doubt be where the land of Pathros comes from, in Egypt. That is to say, in the land of Mitzrayim. And Casluhim, who became the Philistines. In other words, the Palestinians. This time in history, the Philistines were not the modern Palestinians, again, land association. The word Philistine became translated Palestine, which is why they call the land of Judea, the land of Canaan, the land of Judea, the land of Palestine, and why we've had all this trouble between the peoples. In other words, you've had an Arabic influence that was fluxed into this, which became the Palestinians. And not only that, you have got Egyptians involved with this. In other words, Mitzrayim begat Ludlam, and Aham, and Lehebim, and Naphthalim, and Pethrum, and Calcium, or Calsuhim, or excuse me, Casluhim, and they became the Philistines. However, some of the children of the land of Canaan dwelt amongst the Philistines and became called the Philistines as well. So again, if you're going to study the Bible, you're going to have to learn to watch the migrations of people and who they become. If you don't, you're going to be totally lost. Because you can't say that a people stayed in one place, or a people that moved to another place on the earth held together and kept their lineage exactly perfect. In other words, these children of Mitzrayim became the territory holder of the land of Egypt. And out of them would come the Philistines. And Caphtorim. At any rate, I hope you see what I'm getting at here. It's all in what's in a name. Okay? It's all in what's in a name. Go and check out the name of the people. Go out and check out where they came from. And go out and check out... You know what? Once you've covered enough in your Father's Word to understand, you will see that people have migrated all through history. They have migrated here and there. And as they migrated, they changed to the name of the land that they migrated to. In other words, they did not keep their names necessarily. What they were called where they originated from. And again, I've given you the examples of we're called Americans, we're called people of the United States of America, but amongst us there are Italians, Irish, Jews, African Americans, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, that is to say both the people of India and American Indians, and even Aboriginal people and people from South America, which actually would be related to the Native American, but we're all here in this land, which is why, it's called the Great Melting Pot. But it's got nothing to do with our origin. In other words, we're called Americans. We weren't, some of us were born here generations later, or 4 generations our family have been being born here. But we did not come from this land. Our people are not native to this land as far as being a people. Our people came from Europe, and from Europe they came from the Middle East. So, to try to run things down along racial lines is only going to end you up in a snare and a trap and a spider's web, which you're not going to be able to explain your way out of, because nobody really knows who became who with regards to some of these people, because they might have become many peoples. They might have blended in with other peoples and become other peoples. So you can't really follow along those lines of, an Egyptian is strictly black and always has been. Well, there's a lot of white mummies been found. There's a lot of white red-headed and blonde-headed and brown-headed mummies been found, and their bodies are in display. And even Egyptologists who are well-studied in their history, and paleontologists and archaeologists can back up exactly what I'm saying about the Caucasian-colored peoples of Egypt. Even the people called the Hyksos. Hyksos. In other words, for someone to claim that Egyptians have always been black or always been dark-skinned is incorrect. For people to claim that people of Ethiopia have always been black or dark-skinned is incorrect. That's how it would appear to the modern mind and to the English-only understanding of the Bible. But once you go into the languages, you will see that this is not the case. It is by land association. And land association carries a lot of weight in the Bible with regards to certain events. In other words, Abraham came from the land of Ur of the Chaldees. In other words, from Babylon. And his children, Isaac and Jacob, would become the progenitors of the children of Israel. But their original land was the land of Canaan, which was not too far from where the Garden of Eden is, or was to be found at one time. In other words, between the rivers there. But anyway, I'm digressing here, and I'm going to get off point. So I'm going to go on with the line here. Verse 13. And Canaan begat Zidon, the firstborn, and Heth. This would be Zidon, also called Sidon. Verse 14. The Jebusite also, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite. Verse 15. And the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite. In other words, old Canaan was busy. Verse 16. And it was amongst the Hivites that the Kenites were hiding or were dwelling at the time when they encountered Israel and tricked Joshua and infiltrated into the tribes of Israel for the very first time. Verse 16. And the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite. Now, a lot of people are going to say, hey, wait a minute now. Hamath, that's Hemath, that's where the children of Cain came from. Well, you're correct. They did dwell in the land of Hamath, but they were not of the children of Hamath. They will be called the children of Rechab of Hamath, or even maybe even the children of Hamath in speech, again by land association. But they are not of the children of Hamath by Canaan. You know, a lot of people have thrown this at me. They say, you say that, I'll tell you what, as we get to 2 Chronicles chapter 2, 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 55, you're going to see the Kenites mentioned as being the scribes and the Nethinims. Nethinims are the ones given to service. In other words, they were the ones that Joshua made into slaves and hewers of wood and gatherers of water for the temple, that is to say the tabernacle. They made them servants, which is how they even infiltrated the tabernacle. But just because you see the word Hamathite here as being the offspring of Canaan, that has no article to do with Cain other than Cain, or the family of Cain, with Jehonadab and Rechab, once dwelled amongst the Hamath, or the children of Hamath, which is to say the Hamathite. Again, it is land association, it is not bloodline. You must learn the differentiation between land association and bloodline, seed line. Just because a person is called a certain name does not mean that they are of a certain seed line. Okay, now we're going to go back to the sons of Shem. Like I said, this is kind of going to be hodgepodge. It's going to jump back and forth. The sons of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Artsaphat, and Lud, and Aram, and Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Meshech. There's Meshech again. Not the same Meshech as before. Again, a family name, or a passed down name. Verse 18. And Arphaxad begat Shelah, and Shelah begat Eber. A lot of people say, well, Eber, that means Hebrew. That's the first one that was ever called in Hebrew. Well, that's not true. Though the name does mean Hebrew, or does say Hebrew, it's simply a name that means one that crossed over the river. However, Abraham was the first Hebrew of the line of the Hebrews. Why? Because he crossed over the river Euphrates. In other words, he crossed out of Babylon into the land of Canaan, and God told him that he would give to him to the land for an inheritance. So, try to understand these things, and ask your father about this if you do not understand these things, and you will pick up on it eventually if you study the Bible hard enough and long enough. Because there are people out there teaching false doctrines right now about who is who in genealogy when they don't even know. They've got no clue. They're doing it by what they understand of English, and yeah, maybe they have looked into the Hebrew a little bit, but only enough to be dangerous. Only enough to see just a little bit. They see a small portion of a huge tapestry, a huge picture. Verse 19. And unto Eber were born two sons. The one was Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. In other words, in his days the earth was divided, probably having to do with a great earthquake or some big event, or maybe even certain other events which happened. I don't really want to go into right now. Verse 20. And Joktan begat Almodad, and Sheleph, and Hazarmaveth, and Jerah. Verse 21. Hadoram also, and Uzal, and Diklah. Verse 22. And Ebal, and Abimael, and Sheba. Verse 23. And Ophir, and Havilah. There's Havilah again. And Jobab. And this would be better translated Yobab, because there is no J in the Hebrew language, but this goes right along with what Moses' father-in-law was called. Let's see. All these were the sons of Joktan. Verse 24. Shem. Okay, here we go. Got another Shem. Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Reu, Serug, Nahor, and Terah. Okay? And then from this one would come Abram, verse 27, Abram. The same is Abraham. In other words, this is Father Abraham. Verse 28. And the sons of Abraham, Isaac and Ishmael. Now you see that in the Bible here, Isaac is mentioned first. That is because through Isaac would the seed be called. However, Ishmael was his firstborn. Verse 29. These are the generations of the firstborn of Ishmael. Nebaioth, and Kedar, which also means dark, Adbeel, and Mibzam. Verse 30. Mishma, and Duma, Massa, Hadad, and Tema. Verse 31. Jetur, Naphish, Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael. In other words, much like Israel, Ishmael had about 12 sons or so. Verse 12. Now the sons of Keturah, Abraham's concubine, bear Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian. This would be of who Jethro would come from. He was a Midianite priest, and he was of this people, Midian. And Ishbak, and Shua, and the sons of Jokshan, Sheba, and Dedan. Verse 33. And the sons of Midian, Ephah, and Epher, and Henoch, and Abida, and Eldiah, and these are the sons of Keturah. In other words, Abraham's concubine, or Abraham's second wife. Verse 34. And Abraham begat Isaac, and of course Isaac was born of, not of Keturah, but of Sarah. And Isaac, or the sons of Isaac, which, if you look up the word Saxon, you will find out it means the sons of Isaac. Esau, which means hairy, and Israel, which was Jacob, and Israel means the prince that prevails with God. Verse 35. And the sons of Esau, Eliphaz, Reuel, and there's that name again, Jeush, Jaalam, Korah. Verse 36. The sons of Eliphaz, Teman, and Omar, Zephi, and Getam, Kenaz, Timnah, and Amalek. And Amalek would, of course, be the father of the Amalekites. And Teman would be an area in the south part of the land of Judea, the land of Canaan. Verse 37. And the sons of Reuel, Nahath, Zerah, Shema, and Mizah. And you're going to see various spellings of this name, Shammah and Shammai, all through the Bible. Verse 38. And the sons of Seir. And of course, these are also the children of Esau. Mount Seir, Lotan, and Shobal, and Zibeon, and Anah, and Dishon, and Ezar, and Dishan. Verse 39. And the sons of Lotan, Hori, and Homam, and Timnah was Lotan's sister. Verse 40. And the sons of Shobal, Alian, Manahath, Ebal, Shephi, and Onam, and the sons of Zibeon, Aiah, and Anah. Verse 41. And the sons of Anah, Dishon, and the sons of Dishon were Amram, and Eshban, and Ithron, and Sharon. Verse 42. And the sons of Ezer, Bilhan, and Zavan, and Jachan, and the sons of Dishan, Uz, and Aran. Verse 43. Now these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the children of Israel. In other words, as written, the eldest son, even though he lost his birthright, would come into his own kingdom. In other words, they had a kingdom before there was ever a king in Israel. If you can look at the spiritual meaning of this, you'll see that Russia was born before the United States, which is what these two nations are symbolic of, and even Europe. Bela, the son of Beor. The name of his city was Dinhadbah. Verse 44. And when Bela was dead, Jobab the son of Zerah of Basra reigned in his stead. Verse 45. And when Jobab was dead, Husham the son of the Temanites reigned in his stead. Husham, no doubt named for old Uncle Ham there, or maybe by land association, but he is of the Temanites. In other words, he is of the children of Esau. Verse 46. And when Husham was dead, Hadad, the son of Bedad, who smote the Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his stead. And the name of his city was Avith. Verse 47. And when Hadad was dead, Samiah of Masrekah reigned in his stead. Verse 48. And when Samiah was dead, Shaul, which would be a derivative of Saul, of Rehoboth, by the river reigned in his stead. Verse 49. And when Shaul was dead, Baal-Hanan, the son of Achbor, reigned in his stead. Verse 50. And when Baal-Hanan was dead, Hadad reigned in his stead, and the city, and the name of his city was Pai, or Pai, and his wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mehezib, or Mezahib. Verse 51. Hadad died also, and the dukes of Edom, this dukes would be like we refer to dukes now in English history. In other words, men of power, rulers, lords over the land. Not quite to the level of kings. You could say governors, or maybe even a little more powerful. Or look at them even as the princes of Edom. The dukes of Edom were Duke Timnah, Duke Aliah, Duke Jetheth, verse 52, Duke Aholibah-ma. You're to recognize that name, Aholibah-ma, at least the Aholibah part of it, Duke Elah, and Duke Pinon, verse 53, Duke Kenaz, and Duke Teman, and Duke Mibzar, verse 54, Duke Magdiel, Duke Iram. These are the dukes of Edom. And this is where we're going to stop. I knew this was going to be slow going. At least for the beginning here it will be slow going, because we have to sort things out to keep things correct and to wake people up to the truth as to who is who in the Bible and who ascended from who. In other words, my sole point in pointing out what Cush actually means, and Cushites, and some of these other names, was the Bible clearly tells us in the book of Genesis that God created the races on the sixth day. It doesn't say races, but it says that God created man upon the earth. Well, there is a word for man. It is Adam. But then there is a certain man mentioned who was created after the seventh day, and his name is Eth Ha-Adam, which means the man Adam. That certain man Adam. In other words, Adam who was husband to Eve. That's how we know that Adam and Adam are not the same people. Adam is simply a word that means man. And if you say Eth Ha-Adam, you're saying the man. Or the certain man. In other words, God separated the people out according to the way He wanted them separated. And He put the peoples of the world where He wanted them put, to begin their journey to wherever they would migrate to, or the peoples that they would become. But land association plays a huge, vast portion in the Bible as far as who is who in the Bible. But you also have to remember that you have to keep the line straight. It's not that it's so important as far as today, because all men are welcome to come to Christ no matter of what race or nation they be. But in future books of the Bible from this point, there are going to be certain people that are ordered to be killed off because of idolatry. So, at any rate, I hope you're gaining a little bit of understanding from this. It's going to be a little bit complicated, but not so much when you ask your Father for wisdom and guidance. And when you take the time to study from the Hebrew, and likewise in the New Testament from the Greek. If you do these things, you're going to understand a lot better, and as you become more familiar with the manners of speech and the colloquialisms, you will understand things on a deeper level than most are able to see. And when you do this, you will understand who is who in the Bible and who is not who. Because, like I said, there are many people out there with a basic English-only understanding of the Bible, or a very vague minor Hebrew and Greek understanding of the Bible, who have not really gone into the manners of speech or the full definitions and semantic fields of all the words. Therefore, they're tripped up and believe things like that the black race came from Ham. Well, the black race did not come from Ham. The black race did not come from Canaan. The black race was created on the sixth day of creation, along with the red race, the yellow race, and even others of the white race. But it's got nothing to do with racism or bigotry or anything like that to state these things. If you cannot teach the Bible in truth, then you might as well chunk the Bible in the trash can and not read it at all. And I know this is going to cause consternation and strife and a lot of argument, and hey, it always has. You know, I expect it. When I put out the Lost Tribes of Israel video, I get arguments on that all the time. When I put out a number of videos about the races or about things, people tend to put their race pride in front of the Word of God and as to what is truly said in the Bible. When I try to give everybody the ability to go and look the things up for themselves. However, you have to ask God, our Father, to show you these things, or you're not going to see them. Because there are those who go and do study from the Strong's Concordance, and they use things like Zondervan's work, or Scofield's Bible, or a number of other things, and they get all confused and wrapped up inside, and they start believing things which are not the truth. You cannot have a people turn in one generation from one color to another. That just doesn't happen. And it's not written that it did anywhere in the Bible. The only time you've ever had color change is when people became lepers. But all people are as God created them. In other words, when God created the black race, the Indian race, the Asian race, He looked and it was good. And they still look today the way they looked then. So, this whole idea of this one person, this one place in the Bible, because he was cursed by Noah, bringing forth the black people because they are called Cush, which many have translated as black, and indeed it probably does have a connotation to the word black. But then again, there are many words in the Bible. Again, look up the word shakur or shakor or shakwar. There's a number of words that mean black in the Bible. However, they don't refer to race because people didn't refer to each other as such in these times. At any rate, this is where I'm going to end this particular Bible study. We'll pick this up in the next lecture with the beginning of 1 Chronicles chapter 2. And as always, my beautiful brothers and sisters in Christ, no matter who you are, where you come from, what race you are, your Father loves you. And He gave you a Messiah. He gave you an intercessor. He gave you a path to heaven. And the path is narrow, and there will be few people that go thereat. However, the path that leads to destruction is wide. In other words, the path of man's wisdom, the path of false teachings, the path of men's ideals. They're all vanity and they lead nowhere. There's only really one truth when it comes down to it. And if you want to be in the truth, then study to show yourself approved deep enough to see the truth. And I know many of you do, and God bless you for that. But as always, it's my prayer for you that you will study in this Word. You will go into the languages. You will learn the manners of speech. And you will become familiar with things like land association. Like the simple little things that God gave us to show us and give us clues from this holy book of His. And when you do that, you'll understand the book a lot better, and you won't be tripped up according to these things which we've been covering. So at any rate, I'm going to knock off here. May God bless you and fill your cup to overflowing so that you can pour out to others that they may drink and come to the truth. And as is the plan of God, come to repentance so that they may live forever, because that is the plan of God, that none should perish, but all should come to repentance. That's what God really wants in the end. He wants our unrequited love, our loyalty. He wants to be our Father, and He wants us to be His children, His sons. And so it shall be. And those that will not be His sons will be cast into the lake of fire and burned up and be gone, and we'll never have to worry about them again, as pronounced on Satan in Ezekiel chapter 28. At any rate, I'm going to cut this off here now, and may God bless you, and thank you for listening. This has been Just Thoughts.